Hello, my name is Hannah Price. Right now I am currently in my master's degree through University of Arizona, and I'm studying to become a special education teacher for the deaf and hard of hearing. Today I wanted to make a resource for families that maybe have recently one of their children diagnosed as deaf or hard of hearing, and how important early intervention is for these families and for your child. These last few semesters I've learned all about early intervention and how important it is for families, and I just want this to be a resource for families that have recently received this diagnosis or who are trying to navigate all the decisions that entail this. Early intervention is critical for a deaf and hard of hearing child. The first few years is the most critical period of time for a child to learn and develop language and different cognitive abilities. Early intervention services gives families the support they need for their child's communication, language, social, and cognitive development. Services within the early intervention field is speech and language pathologists, therapy, audiology services, deaf educators, family coaching, and connections to different community resources. Every child who is deaf or hard of hearing has different degrees of hearing loss. They may be born into a family that already signs, or born into a family that has never signed before. These differences impact the child immensely, and having the support that you need is going to be very important for your child and your family's success. When early intervention is utilized, this will ensure that the child is receiving the support they need and the language and cognitive skills that they need to achieve at certain ages. So one thing that is also very important, and a lot of research has been done on, is family-centered intervention, or FCEI, which I'll be referring to that as such. This just focuses on the parent's role in the child's life. If you go to a therapist or a deaf advocate, they're only with the child for a certain amount of time per week, or a few times a week. Parents are a child's most important teachers. Professionals have the role of collaborating with the parents, understanding where you're coming from, what your background is, with deaf culture and with sign language and with different audiology services, so that they can meet your needs and then you can support the child in what they need. So the goal of FCEI is that families are the main leaders in the collaboration. So they're the ones asking questions, setting goals for their family and for their child, choosing different communication approaches for their child that will best suit them and their family. Family-centered intervention supports a child's language and cognitive development at home through natural times like mealtime, playtime, bedtime. True intervention comes through this route. The book Promoting Language and Literacy in Children Who Are Deaf or Hard of Hearing, written by Mary Pat Muller, David J. Ertmer, and Carol Stoll-Gammon, describe family-centered intervention as this. Family-centered approaches are those that recognize the primary role of the family in fostering children's development. They seek to establish parent-professional partnerships to build on family strengths, address family-identified needs, and promote children's development in the context of early intervention. This perfectly describes exactly what I have been previously talking about, and it's just very important for a child to have the support system early on so that their brain can fully develop and hit those milestones to have a successful life and successful learning in the future. FCEI is also very interested in the family's values that are in the home, culture, and existing communication style that is being used so that they can better match the child's needs. So before a child starts speaking or talking, they're already processing language. They're processing things like touch, smell, vision, hearing. Those are all of our senses. Even when you're a baby, a newborn baby, you are receiving all of this sensory input and learning how things connect, and your brain is making different connections as it's growing up. Through these encounters, the brain begins to create these neural pathways and connections. Repeated communication strengthens these brain connections, supporting cognitive skill and language fluency. In the same textbook that I referenced earlier, the author Kuhl stressed that simply by listening to language, infants become pattern detectors. They attend to statistical patterns in the input, including distributional and phonological cues, in order to identify word boundaries in running speech and to learn words and grammar. Social interaction plays a key role in these developments. The value of auditory linguistic exposure for spoken language learning is evident from early stages of development. This supports the emphasis in spoken language interventions with infants on fine-tuning listening skills to enable typical perceptual processes to unfold. Early access to optimized audibility and intervention is also considered important for taking the greatest advantage of sensitive periods of brain development. That was very long-winded, but essentially, this author is describing the importance of having auditory input to develop language in an infant and in a child. Some families and different children do not choose to use any hearing technology to assist them in their hearing, and that is okay as long as this child is having access to some sort of communication. So whether signed, spoken, or both forms of communication are used, this exposure to language and communication encourages healthy brain development and sets the groundwork for future learning, literacy, and communication. Without accessible language, essential opportunities for brain development may be delayed. I'm going to go into vocabulary milestones of what your child should be at the appropriate age. So at 12 months, children should know approximately about 3 words, 18 months, 50, 24, they should know 200 to 300 words and beginning to combine 2-word phrases. At 3 years old, approximately 900 to 1,000 words, 4 years, 1,500, 5 years, 2,000 plus words. Every child is so different in their development of vocabulary, but monitoring this growth assists professionals and families on how to proceed and how to support the child best so that we're hitting those milestones and hitting those language development skills. From the Moeller and Ertmer textbook, they talk about the difference between natural languages and communication approaches. The difference between natural language and communication approaches is pretty simple. Natural language is a complete language that can stand on its own with its own grammar, vocabulary, and sentence structure. They develop naturally within different communities and different places. A communication approach is a specific method used to support language learning or communication. These approaches are not separate languages, but tools that can be used to support language access. Different natural languages that this author describes is spoken English or other spoken languages. And the modality or the way that we use this or the way that we also receive input in order to understand this language is auditory oral, listening and speaking. They are natural languages because they are learned through hearing and speech. Children may access spoken languages through hearing technology such as hearing aids or cochlear implants along with spoken language intervention. Another natural language is American Sign Language or ASL, and the modality is visual gestural. So you're seeing signs, you're getting sensory and input visually, and then you are producing language gesturally by using your body. ASL is a complete natural language with its own grammar, syntax, vocabulary, and it's very distinct from English. It's expressed through hand shapes, movement, facial expressions, and body language. Other natural sign languages are also visual gestural. Many countries have their own natural sign language as well, like British Sign Language or French Sign Language, and like ASL, they're independent languages with their each unique linguistic structures. Just to recap, natural languages can exist by themselves. They have their own grammar, have their own syntax, have their own vocabulary. They were developed naturally in a certain place or a community. And communication approaches are just tools to use in order to access that natural language. If you're interested in learning more about ASL, you can check out organizations like the National Association of the Deaf. And if you want more information on spoken language, you can check out the Alexander Graham Bell Association for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. So there are a few different communication approaches that will support your child's overall language development. These are also listed in the textbook I've been referencing, and they are very important depending on what style of communication you are choosing to use in your family and in your daily life. You can use these different approaches to help support that language development. The first communication approach is auditory verbal, and this focuses on developing spoken language through listening. Children use hearing technology like hearing aids or cochlear implants, and visual cues such as speech reading are minimized. So we're really focusing on the ability to hear and receiving language and receiving sensory through auditory means. Auditory oral emphasizes listening in spoken language while allowing the use of speech reading, facial expressions, and natural visual cues to support understanding. So this will be used with like spoken English, and then you'll also be combining auditory input with visual information, making the spoken language more accessible. Cued speech uses 8 different hand shapes right here around the face and 4 placements near the mouth to visually distinguish speech sounds that look alike on the lips. It is not a language, but a visual communication system. If the child is learning phonology and structure of spoken English, these cues will be able to make every speech sound visually distinct, supporting them in their endeavor to learn language. This can improve reading, literacy, and speech perception. Total communication encourages the use of multiple communication methods like speech, sign language, fingerspelling, gestures, speech reading, and hearing technology based on that child's needs. This really supplements language development by giving that child access to all these different modalities and increases their language exposure while supporting spoken and or signed language development as well. Simultaneous communication involves speaking and signing at the same time, typically using manually coded English systems rather than ASL grammar. So this reinforces spoken English because you are signing and talking in English simultaneously. It does not fully represent English or ASL, but it is a way to incorporate both of these languages for a communication approach to support your child. Bilingual, bicultural communication approach is recognizing American Sign Language as the child's first language and teaching them written and spoken English as a second language while emphasizing deaf culture. This supports the overall language development by establishing a strong first language, which would be ASL, and providing a foundation for learning English, literacy, and furthering their academic skills. Communication approaches are methods of providing access to language, not language themselves. They supplement natural languages, such as spoken English or American Sign Language, and they help children who are deaf or hard of hearing have access to and learn whatever language that their family chooses for them or that they are able to resonate with more. Early, consistent exposure to a natural language through an appropriate communication approach supports cognitive, social, and academic development. I just wanted to include 2 additional resources for you to go check out if you are interested in learning more. 2 of my favorites are Hands and Voices. This is a parent-driven nonprofit organization that supports families of deaf and hard of hearing children. No matter the communication mode, degree of hearing loss, or educational placement, the organization is here to support you. The purpose of the program is to help families gain more knowledge for their deaf and hard of hearing child and how to navigate early intervention and educational services for that child. It's a very strong parental support group to reduce feelings of isolation and increase confidence in making informed decisions for you and your family. Another resource that I love is the National Center for Hearing Assessment and Management. This supports families by providing information on newborn hearing screening, early diagnosis, early intervention services, and ongoing language development. The program encourages families to follow the 136 guidelines. 136, the referencing is by 1 month, you want a hearing screening for your child. By 3 months, you want a diagnosis. And by 6 months, you want enrollment in early intervention services. This organization promotes rich language exposure no matter what form of communication that the child is using. Thank you so much for watching this. Remember, early identification and intervention significantly improves language outcomes. It is very important to get connected with organizations and intervention services as early as possible after a diagnosis. Consistent communication with your child every day in natural moments like mealtime, bedtime, playtime is critical, and family participation in interventions will help your child immensely. Every child deserves full access to language from the earliest possible age. There are so many resources out there. Please don't feel alarmed or overwhelmed. People want to support you, and there are a lot of organizations in order to do that and a lot of information out there for you.